Does becoming a better writer simply come down to writing more? Or is there more that you need to do? Does producing a large quantity of writing produce quality skills? Or does your focus need to be on the quality of the writing itself? Well, the answer, as we'll find out, is a little bit more nuanced, which is great because the internet is really good at handling nuance. Speaking of nuance, here's an unnuanced request from me for you to share this video. Not with a high number of people though. Find quality people to share this video with, please. So I don't know who said this originally, but there's this idea out there that anybody can become a good writer. You just have to write 1,000,000 bad words before you start writing good words. That the quality of writing will improve once you've put enough practice in. The exact number isn't what's important here. What's important is this idea that you need to do a ton of practice in order to get good at writing. That mastery comes through repetition. Now, whenever I mention this or talk about this idea, there are inevitably comments that come up about how just writing isn't enough and that you can write 1,000,000 words and still not be that skilled of a writer. You'll also see people say that such and such a famous writer only writes 100 words a day, so the number you write isn't actually what's important, and that you can get similar gains in skill with a smaller amount of practice. I think both sides of this argument have some merit, but neither argument really captures the full story. Improvement requires a couple different metrics and a couple different areas of focus. Is the path to improvement as a writer through writing a lot, or is it through focus on producing high quality writing? These are extreme versions of the arguments, and I recognize that they usually aren't presented this way, but I think exploring things from this extreme viewpoint will help us to understand this a little bit better. I think that this issue ultimately comes down to whether you believe that improvement as a writer is an entirely unconscious or conscious process. And I also think we have to differentiate between practicing writing and executing writing. That's an important distinction as well. Unconscious development in a skill happens when simply practicing that skill makes you better. You get better without realizing. Your brain and your body and your mind and everything just sort of naturally adapts to the demands placed upon it and starts doing things better without you necessarily realizing it. We are naturally wired to get better at activities that we repeat a lot, because if we're repeating something a lot, the better we are at it, the more likely we are to survive. If improving at writing were entirely subconscious, meaning the improvement comes without your awareness, then yes, just practicing, just producing writing would make you a better writer, and the more writing you produce, the better you would become. This is kind of the basis of the argument that you need to write 1,000,000 words to become a better writer. This idea that there's no substitute for practice. Now, the counter argument to this is that just writing won't make you better, that blindly producing 1,000,000 words will leave your skill level at the same place as when you started. I think the reality is somewhere in the middle here, and to really improve, you need elements of both arguments. I think that most of the improvement as a writer happens at a conscious level. You become consciously aware of a problem with your writing, and then you work on building the reflex to not do that thing. That's how you unconsciously become a better writer. You may realize that you use too many action beats to attribute dialogue, and this leads to your dialogue exchanges sounding repetitive. So you then become consciously aware of this problem, and as you practice, you start to consciously pay attention and avoid doing this thing that is damaging to your writing, and then eventually, slowly, it starts to become automatic. So you do become unconsciously better at writing, but that unconscious improvement happens through conscious awareness of the problems in your writing. It's a process of moving things from being aware of the problem and actively consciously fixing it until you just start doing the thing automatically. Just producing writing isn't enough because it's only through evaluation of your writing that you learn about the problems in your writing. How else would you figure out where you need to improve if you never figure out where the weaknesses are? You can do this by simply reading your writing, getting critiques of your writing from other people, also from learning about the craft, watching videos, reading novels, seeing what other writers do and how they approach things differently from you. Yes, it does take conscious effort to improve, but making those improvements unconscious, making them automatic, building up your skill, that comes through practice. And this brings us to the next thing I want to talk about, which is how much practice you should do. And assuming that your practice is being guided by active conscious improvement, is doing more practice going to result in more skill? The kind of extreme version of this argument is that it doesn't matter how much you actually write, that you can just focus really, really hard on writing a perfect 100 words every day and that will be enough. There's probably not an exact number, and I don't think getting wound up about specific word counts is all that productive, but I would say that there is some merit to the argument of producing as much writing as you can. Limiting yourself to like 100 words a day is problematic because you can probably produce way more than that at the same level of quality. And especially if you're a new writer, if you were to like spend 4 hours trying to produce 100 words, it's not very efficient because you just don't know enough to understand all the nuance and actually produce a better 100 words than if you tried to write like 1,000 words in that time. I think where people get confused with the famous writer who only writes 100 words a day is that they're mixing up practice with execution. The purpose of practice is to gain experience and improve your skills. The purpose of execution is to produce a piece of writing. If you think about like a musician, when they want to get better at either their instrument itself or at performing a particular song, they practice it. They play it over and over and over again, trying to improve the places that need to be improved and make it more automatic to play this song. That's practice. Execution is when you're performing a song live in front of an audience. Execution involves doing the thing once perfectly. Practice is about maximizing seat time. The more quality practice you get, the better you become. Execution is about precision, about getting things right at the skill level that you're at. So when the famous author or whoever is working on a novel and they're only writing 100 words a day, that's execution. They're working at their current skill level to produce a novel that reflects that skill level. They're not trying to practice. They're not trying to get as much seat time as possible. So what can we take away from all of this? How should you approach your practice as a writer? I think it comes down to balancing doing a lot of practice with making sure that you are always consciously trying to improve at something. Have a routine where you produce as much writing as you can in any given day, and make sure that you're producing writing that lives up to your actual skill level. But also, as you're doing that, make sure you have goals set about where you want to improve, what areas of your writing you want to work on for that session. You also need to have a system in place for finding where your writing could get better. This could be by getting critique on your writing, reading other people's writing, or just learning more about the craft. Reading and revising your own work is also very important. I think it's also important to consider what you're writing. You want to expose yourself to as many different types of scenes as you possibly can. Write dialogue and action and description and all kinds of different scenes, because this will give you a broader base of experience and you'll be able to improve your skills in more areas. The more you can expose yourself to in your practice, the better you're likely to become. Just like I exposed you to this video by you watching it. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.